Hello interwebs and welcome to my channel. For today's video, I figured we'd do a really fun list video, and we're going to be ranking all of the first officers of Star Trek. So what that means is I'm going to be going through and ranking all the major first officers on every Star Trek series. I'm not going to get into like the minutia first officers like Commander Shelby, who was in the Star Trek Next Generation episode Best of Both Worlds. I absolutely love Commander Shelby, but I'm just going to be focusing on the main first officers. And again, also I should make a caveat. This is my list, so your list may differ. And also I should say this list was incredibly hard to make because honestly, I pretty much like every single one of the first officers in some way, shape, or form. I think they're all pretty much great. And so this list was actually a very close call, and I actually rearranged it a bunch of times because I couldn't necessarily settle on it. So tomorrow, this list may be completely different than what it is today, but you know, it's a list, it's my channel. We're gonna have some fun. Let's enjoy and let's dive in. But quickly, before we get started, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up if you want more of my good Star Trek geeky and geek culture content. It really helps me out in the algorithm if you do those things. But otherwise, let's just have some fun and dive into the list. All right at the bottom of the list is unfortunately Chakotay from Star Trek Voyager. Yeah, like I said, I love all of the Star Trek first officers, but unfortunately someone's got to be at the bottom, and it kind of was an easy choice to pick Chakotay. And there are multiple reasons for that, both in-universe and out-of-universe. Starting with the out-of-universe stuff, unfortunately, Robert Bellatran, who played Chakotay on Star Trek Voyager, he didn't really care too much about the show or the character. And to be honest, it's not completely his fault. It has to do with a lot of stuff that was going on behind the scenes of Star Trek Voyager at the time, with like a lot of infighting in the cast, producers kind of not being that great, writers not being that great on the show. And this is from someone who likes Star Trek Voyager quite a bit, but I certainly understand his point of view. It is sad to see an actor on a show that I really love not being as invested in, and that probably brings his character down a little bit more in my eyes. But again, I understand people need to make a paycheck. Not everyone's going to be in love with Star Trek as a show that they worked on, so I get his point of view and I'm understanding of it. But even past that, Chakotay was always a character that always felt like he had a lot of misused potential. Number one, they had this great story arc for him right up at the top of the show where he was a Maquis soldier and he left Starfleet and then had to rejoin Starfleet at the beginning of Star Trek Voyager to try and make things work on their ship as they try to make it back to the Alpha Quadrant. But unfortunately, after the first episode, he just kind of pledges loyalty to Janeway, and there's no more conflict really at all. He's mainly just the kind of normal first officer, just doing first officer things and being kind of a general good guy, and it kind of made his character ultimately less interesting in the long run. And the other major disappointment with Chakotay is the fact that he was of Native American descent, but his character never really felt like he was actually distinguishable. It almost came across, and this isn't necessarily for me to say, but it came across as a little bit offensive towards the Native American community because he was just generic Native American. He was from no specific tribe or background. He was just sort of an amalgamation of a bunch of different Native American beliefs and views, and some of them kind of stereotypical at that, which is just unfortunate for a Star Trek show, which is always about like showing diversity and belief. And so to kind of just stereotype a certain entire group of people through this one character ultimately felt somewhat disappointing. Now, again, this is me as a white person, someone who's not Native American, so I can't speak for everyone on that, but from my point of view and from what I've read in criticism of the character, that was sort of a major flaw for Chakotay. All right, next up on the list is Saroo from Star Trek Discovery. And I gotta be honest, this is where the list gets really, really hard. Like, I knew that Chakotay was going to be at the bottom, but the rest of this list was really difficult for me to nail down, and I was actually really kind of sad to see Saroo end up so low, but I kind of understand it. This is a character who we've only seen for 2 seasons, and all the other first officers on Star Trek have had a lot more time to invest in as characters. So while I do quite love Saroo, I understand why other characters are higher up on my list, because I've just been able to invest a lot more into them over time than I have with Saroo. But that being said, Saroo is absolutely great. I've loved to see his growth over the 2 seasons of Discovery that we've gotten so far. He's gone from this character who is defined by fear and anxiety into someone who really stands up for himself. Now, we got an in-universe explanation to that through his Vihari, but it also just really works for me as someone who does deal with anxiety and fear of death a lot of the time in my life, that to see a character kind of overcome that and really become a confident first officer. And I'm actually very excited to see and hope that he gets to be captain in Star Trek Discovery Season 3. There's some hints of that it might be Burnham, it might be Saroo, but I really hope it ends up being Saroo as the captain of the Discovery moving forward, because I think he's really earned it, and he's really come into his own at the end of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. So, love you, Saroo, and I'm sorry you're so bottom of the list. Next up on the list, and I gotta say, I almost put this person as number 2, but I kept reshuffling things, so this was really, really difficult for me. I almost even put him as number 1, but here at number 4, it's Commander William Riker. I know a lot of you are going to hate on me for this, for making him only number 4. I apologize to all of you, because there's a lot to love with Riker. I mean, you gotta love his beard, his sexy, sexy beard, the way he like sits in chairs, the fact that he was very much like the Captain Kirk character of the show, that he was always like, I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna take care of things, but he also felt a little bit more thoughtful and tactical than Kirk ever was. Kirk always felt, not that Kirk was a dummy, but Kirk always felt a little bit more gung-ho to like kind of jump into things, whereas Riker felt a little bit more thoughtful and reserved, probably something that he learned from his time under Picard. And so I really always appreciated Riker for that. And also, he just oozes sex appeal. You gotta love the man for him just oozing sex appeal in basically every shot. I don't think there's a character more on Star Trek that just oozes sex more than Riker does, and I am so here for it. And then also, when we got to see him in Star Trek Picard, he's a freaking amazing father. Like, I just want some Riker pizza, and I mean that sexually. I don't know why I connected that with him being a dad. Oh, that's a little bit creepy and weird. Let's move on, though. I love you, Riker. But next up on the list is my one and only T'Pol from Star Trek Enterprise. T'Pol, and Jolene Blalock as an actress, was a character who really came into her own as the season progressed, as did a lot of characters on Star Trek Enterprise. They kind of took a little bit of time coalescing throughout the entire series, and some of them never really did, unfortunately, talking about Travis here. T'Pol was a character who started off kind of distant, kind of like snooty, and kind of looking down at everybody, and that's kind of how all Vulcans were at the start of Star Trek Enterprise, but I really loved, over the course of the series, seeing her become much more down-to-earth through her time with humans. It was something that even Spock never fully got to show. Like, Spock kind of fell a little bit more into his Vulcanness through his time with humans. Not to say that he didn't have human moments throughout the series. Obviously he did. That's why we love Spock. But he kind of became more and more Vulcan, whereas we kind of got to see the opposite with T'Pol. She was a character who became a little bit more human, a little bit more empathetic, a little bit more understanding as the show progressed. And I think that really made me fall in love with her character throughout the series. Now, she was a bit misused here and there throughout the series. There was that on-again, off-again thing with Trip. There was the stuff where she basically became a heroin addict for a little while there in season 3. So she was never used perfectly, but I just really loved seeing number one, a female first officer for once, and also a first officer who kind of got to show a little bit more of herself and evolve very clearly throughout the entire series, reminding us of another famous first officer, but also didn't replicate that same exact journey. In fact, kind of was the opposite of that journey. And so I thought that was a really cool reversal of the sort of normal Star Trek Spock storyline. Speaking of female first officers, though, next up on the list is, of course, Kira Nerys. Kira Nerys is honestly one of the most badass characters, not mention most badass women, in all of Star Trek. And she was a character that was really just fascinating in terms of her development as a character and development of her morality. She comes off in the first season of the show as someone who's just angry, and rightfully so. She was a terrorist who fought against the oppression and occupation of her planet, Bajor. Like, she literally lived through a Holocaust and rightfully was very angry, upset, and had a chip on her shoulder because of that. But you start to see throughout the rest of the series, her learning to kind of channel that anger and that aggressiveness into something a bit more productive for the times that she's in. And that kind of mirrored Bajor in general. So, something taking their pain and their hurt and making it into something much more productive in this era past the Holocaust, learning to heal from those wounds, as it were. And it was just really beautifully shown in Kira, but she never lost her edge at any point in the series. Like, she was just as badass in the first episode of the show as she was in the last episode of the show. And that's a really hard line to toe with a character, to show them learning and growing and learning to be a better leader, and yet never losing their edge in terms of their anger and her badassness. I guess that's sort of the best way to put it. And I just absolutely love Kira Nerys for that. Nana Visitor did a fantastic job. And shout out to Nana Visitor as Mirror Kira, because Mirror Kira, one of my favorite characters in all of Star Trek 2. I just love how much Nana Visitor is just relishing playing that character. But Kira Nerys, my second favorite. But for our top pick, the number one first officer in all of Star Trek, I mean, who else could it be? It's definitely Commander Shelby. I lied. Shelby is definitely number one. She's freaking amazing. I adore her. She really should have been the first officer. Riker should have left after Best of Both Worlds, and she should have been the first officer on the Enterprise D. No, of course, I'm kidding. The number one first officer in all of Star Trek, you gotta love him, Spock. I mean, what else is there to say about Spock that hasn't already been said a million times? He is the pinnacle of what Star Trek can do with its characters. I don't think there's a better character in all of Star Trek than Spock. And this is from someone who loves so many characters like Seven of Nine, Jadzia Dax, all those characters. But Spock just epitomizes Star Trek ideals. He epitomizes the diversity of the crew, showing logic versus emotion. Also, this wrestling with two different sides of yourself, trying to reconcile two different elements of who you are inside. He basically, every theme of Star Trek is found within the character of Spock. And despite that, despite being so heavy with so many wonderful themes and ideas, he still feels so real. There's a reason that so many people connected with Spock throughout the years. I mean, he is, as Kirk put it in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, the most human. Though he might find that term offensive in some ways. But what do you think? I'd love to hear your ranking of the first officers of Star Trek. Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with my list? Let me know down in the comments below. And like I said at the top, don't forget to subscribe and give a thumbs up. And if you want to help make this channel even better and help me during this time where I lost my full-time job because of all the craziness going on in the world right now, it would really mean a lot to me if you could help me out over on my Patreon. Every little bit helps. Like I said, I lost my full-time job, so helping me there really helps me pay the bills in a very direct way. But regardless, if you subscribe or give a thumbs up or give to my Patreon, I'm just glad that you stopped by and hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Thank you, all of you, for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons, including my amazing commander level and above patrons, Miranda Janelle, Ashley Allen, Eli Berg-Moss, Sela Roman, Christina Dalliance, Greg Gillum, Stefan Schuhart, Boyd and Mary Beth Earl, Ish the Mad, Randy Thompson, Mouse Pounder, Wellington Marcus, Lorena Mesa, Alexander Miller, Mari Neckar, Gavin Robinson, Michael Beam, Aaron Brown, Munir Amlani, Maggie Evans, Maeve, Wendizzle Bizzle, Dante St. James, Wayne Twitchell, Patrick Shannon, Din Hagney, Mystic the Monarchete, Bree Beecher, and Polly Mina. All of your support means so much to me right now, so thank you to all of you. Live long and prosper.